Welcome to Seeking Numina, the Sacred Places podcast. I'm your host, Elise Wells, and today I'm joined by Mary Ann Clements. Mary Ann is a feminist writer, leader, facilitator, and coach, and helps people and organizations explore how the injustice they stand against shows up in them. She is currently co-CEO at ADD International, a participatory grant maker for disability justice, and also is working on her first novel. Aisha and Marianne ran the Red Tent directory together for a decade and co-authored Red Tents, Unraveling Our Past and Weaving a Shared Future. It's available from Womancraft Publishing, which is how I heard about your amazing book, and you can learn more about Red Tents at redtentdirectory.com. Welcome to Seeking Numina. I'm your host, Elise Wells, and I invite you to connect with the sacred wild within and around you through Numina, or sacred sites, around the world, and the wisdom they hold. Together, let's remember the old ways, build relationships with land spirits, and dare to reach out to the fairies. The sacred wild is inviting you to dance in the moonlight. Will you answer their call? So let's start with that. Welcome, and tell us about Red Tents.
Thanks, Elise. So I like to start by sort of explaining how I found Red Tent. So I was part of a women's community that I found, probably 15, maybe 20 years ago now, a long time ago. One of the women who was part of that, a woman called Elisa Starkweather, who it does the forward to the book. So if you get the book, you can go read a bit more from her. She shared this idea with us. It's a community called Women in Power, but she shared this idea of red tents with us. And at the time, I was in like a job where I was really exhausted and tired and burnt out, basically. And my marriage was falling apart. And I was just in that kind of place where I really needed kind of holding and support. And had maybe never before found it in communities of women, but the idea of red tents that she shared was this monthly place where women could come, be together, share community, and the idea that you could hold them anywhere, that they could be in every village or town or community or space where a space for women, a place to care for ourselves, but in community with one another. And this sort of idea really struck me as, wow, that's a thing I've never thought of, and also a thing I haven't had access to in my life previously. And we started holding them through this community of women that I was a part of, the Women in Power. I think that was maybe 2009, 2010, a while ago. And the first one that I went to, I remember I drove to this woman's house, and it was quite an unstructured space, began with a circle, people checking in, sharing how they were doing, and that sense of sacred space for sure, but simple, uncomplicated, no big agenda or workshop or concept or anything, but more of like a space. And you could kind of choose then, what did you want to do? And I went and just curled up and fell asleep for a few hours. And I remember thinking this, I could have done this at home, but I wouldn't have done this at home. At home, I would have like done some important thing that I'm supposed to do. But here, there was like permission. And for me, one of the big things about finding red tents and this concept was the concept of spending other time with other women where there was permission to just rest, care for yourself, be in community, be heard, be seen, but also not to have this grand agenda or yeah. So that's what red tents are about for me. In the book, we also talk about kind of the origin of the term. We talk about Elisa's work. We talk about other women's work, and also the way that this idea has been traced to ideas of menstrual women coming together during menstrual times. There's a book which is a novel about called The Red Tent, which is about women in biblical times coming together, and it's sort of oriented around the idea of a place where you maybe went to bleed together. But again, it's a novel. So, and then, there are loads of concepts from different parts of the world. So I think there is this kind of archetype of a place where women come to be together, the Red Tent. in the book we choose we I mean we can talk more about it, but in the book we really talk about what does a red tent for these times look like, you know? So yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what drew me to your work is how do we curate sacred space for women in a time where, for the first time in anyone who's alive today's recollection, in the West anyway, we're seeing rights taken away. We're seeing
Yeah,
grandmothers who had more rights than their children's children. That
yeah,
has never happened in
yeah,
living memory, in the West anyway.
yeah,
And I think what's upsetting, there's a lot of things that are upsetting about that, but one of the hard points of it for me is that for so many women, their reaction to that is to turn on other women or to
yeah,
play into patriarchy's game of othering us from each
yeah,
other. And
yeah.
so I think red tents are more important than ever.
It's interesting to hear you say that, Elise. And we wrote this book during kind of before and during the first lockdowns in the UK, at least. And the funny bit about doing the book during COVID when you couldn't really meet was, we're writing this book about women meeting, but it was rooted in 10 years of running, or about 10 years of running this online site called the Red Tent Directory, where we used to host listings of these red tents that people could so people could find one another. We don't host the listings anymore, but we still have the site there. You can find out more about red tents there, and it's at redtentdirectory.com. We don't do the listings because it just became like a job that we didn't mean to invent for ourselves, and we felt we couldn't kind of vet them or be responsible for them without setting up a whole infrastructure. And in the end, we decided that that just wasn't something that we wanted to do, and that we would hope people would find each other in other ways and so on. But yeah, it was before the current climate in a way, before we knew what would happen kind of next in the world. But I suppose some of the signs were there. And I think we really felt through our experience of running that directory that there was something important about creating these spaces that were like, we talk about liberatory spaces. And we talk about them being liberatory in different ways. One is that, that you can care for yourself as well as be in community with others, that those things don't have to be, like you're either looking after everyone else or you're looking after yourself, that sort of lie of kind of patriarchy and capitalism, that there's somehow, this the choice to be made about care and how much of it there is to go around. But then also we really thought about what do inclusive spaces look like, spaces where genuinely you could say like different different women from different walks of life are welcome. And that became increasingly important to us because we learned through running that directory. And Aisha, who I wrote the book with, supported lots of people with issues that came up in red tents, around things like inclusion or how to promote them, how to run them. We started to think quite deeply about, well, what does it mean to create a space that is inclusive, that can be like a community space in a modern world where, like we don't always all know each other, and we don't always all have the same background or way of thinking, or, so what does that look like? And I think that's what the book's really built on, our thinking about that and our experience with that. And not just our experience, but there's like the experience of, I can't remember how many it is, but about 70 or 80 other women in there somewhere around that, who told us their stories about their red tents and how they did things and what they learned and what they changed along the way as well. So I think I love that you're feeling that it's something for these times, because I hadn't made that connection. But these certainly feel like times where we need new ways of being together that buck some of the trends that we're seeing in the world right now that are deeply worrying. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think it has to happen in person.
Yeah.
Like it's increasingly, it's so easy to be duped online. Like from
Yeah,
deep
right.
fakes to AI edited videos to AI videos completely non-human, like no humans involved. It's just AI. It's
Mhm.
and I've seen the way a lot of people are taken in by it. At first it was just older people and we could laugh it off, but now it's very serious. Like and it's getting better by the
This is
day.
getting cleverer, right? And
Yeah.
it's interesting that because I we do have like a very tiny bit in the book, like a couple of pages about running red tents online. People did it during COVID. I did it a little bit before because I was really interested in online groups and online organizing at the time. And I'd also set up another kind of online community. But yeah, like the way that all that tech has gone, I think has like introduced new and bigger risks with that. And I think, I've met loads of lovely people online.
Oh
So
yeah.
I don't want that to go away. But
Hmm.
I really, yeah, I think we have to be cautious about creating the sort of spaces that we're trying to create in Red Tents where you can show up as your full self and be your full honesty in a world where the tech is, we're basically the consumer, right? And
Yeah.
at the best, we're the consumer, at the worst, we're something else. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think we just need that really the reality check that like the real world is the real world, you know? Like
Yeah.
just being in union with each other is so important in the flesh, you know, physically. And I think we
Yeah.
forget that. I mean, I run online containers myself. Like
Yeah.
I have so much deep love for the online space and it really like on Zoom with the right dynamic and then you carry it over into a group chat and you really do get true sisterhood. It's not that that's inauthentic, but there is something to be said. Like this year for the first time I'm running, trying to think when this episode comes out. I think I'll be wrapping up this course when this episode comes out, but I'm running a 12-week online container that ends with an in-person retreat. So everybody will get to know
Nice.
each other in both ways, you know. And then I do immersives in Greece. I take people to sacred sites in Greece and do
Oh,
pilgrimages
nice.
there. And it's nice because a lot of women will then continue to work with me, but online, you know, so it's like in reverse. They
You
get to know
know
each other
them
in person first.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And I think that's probably, yeah, that's I think you totally could have red tents where you meet each other sometimes, and sometimes you're online, or sometimes you also have an online support space and so on. So yeah, it's like use the tech in a way that works for us, but let's not let it control us and
Yeah,
distort
we
us.
should be using the tech, not letting the tech
Yeah,
use
not the tech
us.
using us. Exactly that,
Yeah.
right? Oh gosh.
Yeah,
And
it's an
it's just
increasing
become
uphill
ever more
battle.
evident the way that it uses us and
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I always say too, it's our time. Our only resources that we really have are our time and our energy, and making sure we use that where it's wise. And I think that's
mhm.
something else. Like you said it when you were describing your own experience in a red tent for the first time, that you felt like if you had been at home, you wouldn't have taken that nap. But because you were
Yeah,
in sisterhood, the permission to just do that was there. And that's a quote I think about all the time is that it's in sisterhood that we have permission to expand. You know, it's
yeah,
where we feel safe. It's like falling asleep at a sleepover and you're having those deep conversations and you know, it's a place where you can share honest dreams that you have and have someone reflect back to you, "No, that's not crazy. I think you should write that
yeah,
book. I think you should go on that trip," you know?
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really the kinds of space that we're talking about in the book. I mean, we talk about some different things you can do in red tents, different styles of them, different ways people have done them. But I think the sort of space that we're talking about is really that space to show up as your full self and feel acknowledged. And in many ways, the format of that can be really simple, right? A lot of what we talk about is creating some kind of circle, right?
Yeah.
And some kind of way to arrive and some kind of way to leave and things in the middle. But beyond that, really, the book is all kind of inspiration, but not like not like a
Mhm.
kind
Not
of
prescriptive, yeah.
not prescriptive in that sense. Yeah. And I think really it's an invitation to building that sort of community where you can show up and be honest. And a lot of people told us when we were writing the book and interviewing people, that they didn't have spaces with other women where they could do that kind of thing in their lives, that there, most of the spaces that or connections they had with women were places where they didn't feel they could show up as their full selves. So yeah, it's that kind of sisterhood that you're talking about that I think is, we felt red tents were a really great example of how you can kind of plant a seed of intention to create that, you know. And we also felt like a lot of what we were saying in the book could apply to other spaces, that you could take those lessons and maybe don't call it a red tent and that's fine, maybe you call it something else, but that there was sort of some deep wisdom in the things that people shared with us that we wanted to be able to share out with others. So yeah, that's also part of the inspiration behind the book, I think.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that about not, a lot of people coming to red tents who haven't had deep sisterhood before or authentic sisterhood. I relate to that. When I first, like, I was always like more comfortable with the guys as my friends. And, the few girlfriends I had over the years, like, I had friend breakups or things that just were devastating, so much more devastating. Even when men hurt me in my life, it was never the same level of like, malicious intent that women can seem to have for each other. And I know it comes from a patriarchal place and it comes from, conditioning, societal conditioning, all these things, but it doesn't change the fact that it hurts and it makes it very hard to trust women again. And I
Yeah.
think that's an important point about red tents is they are a place to heal from that
Yeah,
sisterhood
exactly.
wound.
And I think that's why, although the book's not prescriptive, we try and offer some examples of how you can start to do that, how you can start to create some safety. And at the same time, be honest about the fact that it takes time to build that sort of trust, that not everyone's going to show up there and be like, oh, I feel totally safe to be my full self all the time. That if, that sort of conditioning which many of us have, takes a long time to kind of dissipate and fade away. And maybe it never fades completely, but to
Yeah.
change and evolve. So yeah, I think that's also why we have kind of a description of sort of the container and the circle, because we think those are tools. In a lot of ways, one of the most important tools for us is like the concept of not giving advice and not responding when someone shares. And that is one of the things that I think is sort of somehow so counterintuitive when a lot of people hear it for the first time. It's the idea that you intentionally create a container where you're not going to give advice and you're not going to solve the problem and you're not going to fix it when someone talks about something really difficult in your life, in their life, sorry. But that you're just going to listen and hear it and let it be. And people find that so revolutionary because I think there's also a conditioning often to like, how can I fix the problem? Which I know I totally relate to myself at
Yeah.
times, and so we spent quite a bit of time, well, a few pages in the book trying to explain that. But yeah, I also still run groups online and I find like that's the thing that people find super tricky sometimes, you know? Like the desire to
Yeah.
fix it or give advice yeah, is baked into how we relate to one another, I think. Well, not everyone, but in many spaces. So, yeah.
Yeah. And how we can show that we are useful to the relationship. you
Yeah.
know like I'm grateful that you told me that thing. Let me show you how much I care about you by helping you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By giving you a fix or giving you my perspective immediately.
Hmm.
And the impact of that for the other person can be actually, no, I didn't mean that, or actually, what? That's not what I was looking. I just wanted to be heard, and we all, I think, at some level just want to be heard and acknowledged. And, we can still ask for help when we want it. It's not to say we can't, but I think setting up the idea that we only want advice or help if we ask for it is can be revolutionary in itself for some people. So yeah, including me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm definitely like, I'm not a venter. I think that's also why I didn't have a lot of girlfriends, especially like in undergrad and stuff. I just didn't really, I don't like, if something's a problem and I can't fix it, I just don't focus on it. I do something else. And I think that's pretty rare. I think a lot of women do like to vent, and I think that's a good thing. I think I could learn something from it. There must be some good to it
Mm,
if people get something out of it.
yeah. For me it's just like the learning has been this piece around not having to fix it or solve it or do anything, and
Yeah,
how I find that so helpful in myself, and that made it possible to stop trying to just solve everything with other people. But it still catches me in other parts of my life sometimes where I'm not in a container where it's obvious,
yeah,
That,
yeah,
it doesn't go away completely, the old habits.
yeah, yeah. That's how I am with the justification. thing that women get trapped
Mm.
in, like we always have to give a reason. We can't just do the thing. I always find myself over justifying my actions.
Is that for like when you're gonna say like you're saying no to something and you give a long story, or is it more?
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm,
Hmm.
yeah. Someone caught me doing that recently, so I'm not gonna lie. It's not. Yeah.
It's a hard one. The one
It's
I've gotten
hard.
really good at is cutting out the word just from my vocabulary.
Mm,
I just like to say, no, I'd like to say.
hmm
Yeah, that one was years. Like, I'm not kidding, like about a decade I've been working on that one. That and sorry, like trying to not apologize unless it's, of course, like, an egregious act has been
There's a
done.
reason.
But
It's okay.
but yeah,
Yeah.
like just, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot your ice in your glass or,
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that is the value of red tents too, is like they're a place to have these conversations with each other. Because
Totally.
sometimes I think it comes off as like when I first had it was a professor in like freshman year of university. I had a professor saying like, women apologize too much. You should never apologize. She just kind of said that to the whole class. And I was like, mm, like I don't like I was instantly defensive of it because it just was such a blanket statement and it didn't feel relevant at the moment. I have no idea what she was talking about otherwise. But then over the years I thought about it differently and I heard it pronounced differently. And so the safe space of a red tent to explore those things and share them and
Mm.
gently have a sister call you out if they know you're working on, not over explaining your actions. Like that is so powerful having a sister mirror that to you and be like, "Oh, remember that time, Elise? Remember you said you didn't want to do that anymore." And then you're like, "Thank
Love that.
you."
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like that.
So, do you have any parting thoughts for our guests on red tents if they were going to set up a red tent or pursue finding one in their area? Any advice you would give
Yeah.
them?
People ask me that quite often. I do direct them to the book because I think what
Of
we
course,
said
yeah.
in there, we like revised it through this kind of lockdown. And I feel like it's that we felt like this is our, answer to that question, but it's a longer answer. Um, But basically, I think one of our learnings from all the people we talked to was if you possibly can start it with someone else, if you want to start one. Because if you start on your own, our learning was that it can often go into that place of like you feel you have to kind of deliver it more. Whereas if you start with someone else at the beginning, even if it means it takes more time, even if it means, you start in 6 months when you've found the right person and you chat, then generally those are the more sustainable ones. That's one of the risks in women starting red tents is that they start it with a burst of enthusiasm and then they feel like they've got to keep it going for everyone else. And finding one, yeah, so we don't list anymore, but there are places online where people share. But yeah, I think I quite like the idea now and what we were talking about of in person of like putting up a flyer in your local, place where there are flyers, either saying, I'm starting something, who wants to join, or, I'm looking for a space, I'm looking for a women's community, whether you call it red tent or not, but just trying to like follow your instincts. I think that's a really valuable way. Also, I know I see sometimes when I'm on the lookout, there are people doing things around me that might not be called a red tent, but look very much like one. I haven't been to all of them, but I think there are people creating these sort of spaces. So yeah,
Yeah,
follow
yeah,
your instinct, I think is a
yeah. You're never alone, no matter where you live, no matter how rural or far away from things you feel you are. You'd be surprised how much there's women around you asking for the
yeah,
same thing.
yeah, exactly. And if all that fails, read the book.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And start your own. Post in your local groups to find that partner to start it with you. Yeah, I love
Exactly.
that. Well, thank you for being here, Mary Ann. This was really good. I'm
Thanks
excited
so much
for
for having
people to
me.
find your work and, yeah, read the book, Red Tent. It's very, very helpful.
Thanks, Elise. And yeah, I hope people find this useful.
Thank you for seeking Numina with me today. Join me at patreon.com/Elise Wells to support this show and get access to a library of rituals, exclusive videos, meditations, and more. To learn more about my upcoming retreats, Book a tarot reading or learn with me in workshops, classes, or mentorship, visit seekingnumina.com.